All right, my friend, 9 a.m.
Wow. Start right on the dot. All right.
Well, we got things to do.
There you go. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the beginning documents for the buyer. Tomorrow we're going to go over the listing documents, and then we're going to do alternate documents after that. So let's start off. So before you even do anything, you want to see the property. So in today's environment, and this may change going forward as the colors change, we need to do what's called a PED. So the one that you want is you want to make sure you have the visitor PED. So this way, you know, there's different versions of it. This is the one for the visitor. You can put as many addresses as you like. So if you're showing 5 or 6 properties in one day, you can put them all on here with no problem. And basically what the PED says is, you understand we're in a pandemic. You understand government orders saying, you know, we are an essential, stay-at-home orders, we're essential, we're able to do this at this point, but you have to follow these rules. You know, as we're moving in tiers, it's a little bit, you know, less restrictive, but in the beginning, if we didn't follow these rules, they could have taken away our, you know, ability to show homes and stuff, which would not have been good. I'm getting some feedback, so let me just change something here. Okay, a lot better. I hate that thing in my ear. Okay, visitor advisory. You know, we're letting the visitors know that you're doing this. We want to make sure the visitors are not sick. They haven't been sick in the last 24 hours. They don't have a fever. We're just trying to protect everyone involved, the seller, the buyer, the listing agent, everyone who's going to see the property after you. So these are the things we're going to need to do. The purpose of the entry. What's the reason we're going in? This one's going to be to show the property. You know, if you have an appraiser, we need it when we do the appraisal. When you have a home inspection. Anytime you're entering the property, you need to have a PED. Even if the same person's entering the property on another day, you need to have another PED.
Hey, Fred, I have a question about the PEDs.
Sure.
So, okay, so if I'm showing property, is there a limit to how many people I can use one PED for?
Yes.
Meaning, okay, what's the limit?
There are 3. Each PED is only for 3 people.
Including myself?
Yes.
So if I have a family, like a 4, it's really just mom and dad, not the kids or grandparents. It's just myself and the 2 buyers. That's it.
Yes. Okay. So if you have more than that, and we'll go down later when we do the signatures, there's ways to do it.
Okay.
So signer represents, you know, they haven't been exposed, they're not feeling, you know, they're feeling well in the last 10 days, they don't know they've been in contact with anyone, and everyone needs to initial. Buyers, whoever's entering the property needs to initial, including yourself. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
So I thought that as the PED form only allows 3 people on the PED form, and that's because I thought only 3 people were allowed in at the time.
Correct.
Is that true? Or so does that mean that only 2 people with an agent get in at a time, and then the next 2 people can come in at the you know, after the first 2 people are done?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Only 3 people at a time, and the agent has to be one of those 3 people.
Right. So you can have a party of 6 or whatever, as long as only 2 are going at a time with the agent.
Correct. And then you would need a PED for every set of every set of people, you would need a different PED.
Okay.
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 Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
And if there are minors, this is just stating they are going to, you know, if you're bringing minors in, just put their names here, and they don't need to sign, but they just need to acknowledge that they are going in. And again, with minors, make sure they don't touch things, it's turn on lights, open up doors, anything like that, you need to be in control of it. Now, there was a part,
Sorry, where do you put in the minors? I didn't see that.
right where it says number
Additional.
9. Any accompanying minor shall be identified in paragraph 9. So you just put their
Got
names.
it. Thank you. Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And
Thanks.
then first person, you put their name, signature, who are they, the buyer, a leasee, or other entrant like a home inspector, or a broker, and your DRE number. And then again, initials of everybody, broker agent for the buyer. Then you give it to the seller. You will probably never get one back that the seller has signed or the other agent has signed. So for your records, your signatures and your buyer's signatures in dot loop will be sufficient. Then the next part is just this standard verbiage of the P, the rules, all that. You have to give it to them every single time, even though they probably have 50 copies of this.
Another question. Sorry,
Yes.
Fred.
That's okay.
So once we collect all the 20 or whatever Ps that we have from the various agents, when you are a listing agent, is it okay to just submit them into the dot loop as one file?
Correct. What you should do is, what I've done is I've created a folder in dot loop, but this is another class, and just called it PEDS, and I will just upload every PED into that folder.
Oh, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, doesn't need to be reviewed, doesn't need to, just load them up. Okay, now we're going to talk about the meat of the purchase contract. So before you do anything, before they sign any contract, listing, purchase, they need to sign the AD, which is disclosing the agency relationship. Okay, this has to be the first document signed before they do anything else. And basically what this goes through is just tells you what the seller's agent role is, who do they owe fiduciary responsibility to, what their responsibility is, what the buyer's agent is, what their role is, what happens if you act as both a buyer and a seller. So if you're representing, you as an agent representing both, or us as a company represent both. Both is dual agency. So if we have a property that someone from Santa Clarita is writing an offer on, and the listing agent is in Ventura, we have a dual agency because we are both under the same brokerage. It's not Century 21, it's Century 21 Everest. If we write with another Century 21, it's just a regular agency at that point. Again, buyer sign, you sign. A lot of this stuff is going to be filled in from zip forms, as we've done a lot for the template. So we're going to put your name, address, or DRE license, our DRE license, make sure you got it correct, and your DRE license here. This is just verbiage from the civil code of why we got to do this. Nothing gets signed. Okay, so fair housing and discriminatory advisory. This is a form that just recently got added. Basically, it is stated, there are protected classes. We don't discriminate against anyone. We show properties to everyone. You accept offers from everyone. There are no, we just want to make sure everyone understands the fair housing issues. This is becoming more and more an issue in today's environment. So we just want to make sure everyone understands this. These are all the protected classes: race, color, ancestry, natural origin, religion, age, military veteran status. This is an interesting one, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about loans, but any of this is a protected class. Okay? The one I like is number 8. So this talks about the love letters that buyers write to sellers, explaining how they love this property, how they see themselves growing old in this property, how they love that their kids are going to be in this property. There's nothing wrong with a buyer writing the letter. The issue becomes when the seller reads this letter and inadvertently, whether they're conscious or not, makes a decision because of that letter. So whether they go, oh my God, I could see this family in my house, I'd love it, that now becomes a fair housing issue if that's the basis that they're accepting this on. So to eliminate any of that, we advise the sellers not to read these love letters until we've accepted an offer. They can look at it after, but we need to look at the offers purely on what's being offered. Not, oh, this is a family, oh, this is a married couple, oh, we love this, no, we don't love that. So these love letters, I've seen love letters with pictures in them. So all this stuff identifies their class, identifies their race, identifies their, habits, their family. So this could be misconstrued, even though this seller may have no intention at all. But if he's swayed by this to pick one offer over another, that becomes a fair housing issue. So the buyers, they can write as much as they like, but advise the buyer, the seller will probably not look at it to make their decision. And the sellers, we advise, do not look at it, because once you look at it and you decide, did you really decide because of the offer? Did you really decide because of the letter? So to avoid all that, we don't use it at all.
That's a bummer.
It is. I mean, and it does work. I mean, a lot of people got their house because they go, oh my God, I'd love this family to have my house.
Well,
my kids grew up in this house. I'd love my kids to their kids to grow up in this house.
Exactly. So I would be a sucker for the letters.
Yeah, that's why we would not show them to you, Chris.
Yeah.
We will make sure you do not see them.
Right.
Yeah, and it just eliminates the issue at all if you don't see it. Okay? Because no matter how much, you may not inadvertently realize it, but you may be making a decision based on that letter.
Yeah.
Okay, again, buyer sign it, seller sign it, everyone agrees to it. Okay, possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. So what does this really mean? Okay, so this means that, especially in today's market, you may have two buyers who love this property. Century 21 Everest may have two buyers that love this property. We're just letting you know that we may be representing multiple buyers on this property. Century 21 Everest may be representing multiple buyers. But again, information is private. We cannot share with the other buyer. Hey, this buyer is offering, $5,000 over asking. Why don't we go a little bit higher? You really have to segment them and treat each buyer individually. I know it's tough, but that's what we really have. We have to do it to the best that we can, because this is where issues come up. Multiple sellers, okay? We may have multiple listings on the same street. Doesn't mean we're going to favor one listing over the other. Okay, we're just letting the seller know that Century 21 Everest or me as an agent may have multiple listings on the street. If we do, that's great for us, but we're just letting them know that there's no preference of what house we're going to show. Dual agency, and it is agency, just like I explained before. It's not Fred Hazardous, represent buyer and seller. It's Century 21 Everest represents buyer and seller. So when it's dual agency, we just have to disclose that so everyone knows up front that we have both sides of the house interest in this. And this is one of, if it's two separate agents in the same company, it's easy. When it's one agent doing both sides, it becomes an issue. How can you truly say I'm serving my buyer the best when my buyer wants the least to pay the least, the seller wants to get the most? So you have, offset in interest in this. So you really have to be very, very careful, Make sure you have your manager involved or someone involved so they can, help you document every step of the process in case there is ever a claim that we could say, no, this is how we did it. We let them choose the prices. We did not say, hey, I think the buyer, the seller's getting divorced. Maybe we can offer less. Those things are private information. You can't share that even though you know it. This is the one I love also. Offers not necessarily confidential. Especially in today's market, everyone's calling the agent. Hey, do you have any offers? Hey, are they over asking? And the agent goes, oh no, I can't tell you that. Unless the seller in writing said, hey, I do not want you to disclose any offers, they have no issue with disclosing offers at this point. There's nothing that says they cannot. And actually, they're doing their client a disservice by not disclosing. Because when I had a listing out here in Granada Hills, they would call me and say, oh, do you have offers? I go, yeah, right now, the offers are over $850. So I, as a buyer, I'm not going to write an offer for $830, hoping that I'm going to be in a counter. I'm going to, if my buyer is serious, we're going to go over $850. So it just helps the seller. Good night. So it just helps the seller, get the best property or get the best value for their house. So there's nothing wrong with disclosing it.
There is a form though, right? The confidentiality form, should the seller not want anything disclosed? Isn't there a form for that?
There's a check marks later on, but also they could just, it has to be in writing. So it has to be some sort of either an email or a letter stating, please do not disclose any offers. And I've seen very few sellers do that.
Yeah.
So again, brokerage firm, who's representing the buyer, who's representing the seller. Okay, so this is another thing. So this is a purchase contract. When I've received offers, one of the things I'm looking at is the offer itself. And the other thing I'm looking at is the quality of the offer. Did the agent fill in the proper paperwork? Did they check the right boxes? They may have a good offer, but if their offer is actually terribly written, I may have a hesitance to say, hey, this is a good guy we should go with. I mean, if I have another offer that's pretty similar with an agent that has written a well-written offer, I know this guy's going to be down the line following the contract and doing things. If I have someone who can't even figure out who the selling agent is or things like that, that may be an issue for me. Unless this is like the best offer and there's no way to compete, then we deal with it, but then I know up front what type of agent I'm working with going forward. But in this environment of multiple offers, you want to make your offer stand out both the way it's written and the quality of the offer. So you should be calling the listing agent saying, how can I, does your, who's your escrow company? Who's your title company? Fill in as many things as you can to show that you're invested in this property and you're a top agent and you want to get this deal done. I mean, I've seen so many offers that I get a blind offer, they show the house, they never called me, nothing ever, and all of a sudden I have this offer show up.
Right.
I'm going, I don't know anything about these people, who are they? Wire fraud advisory. Again, this is something that's still going on. We have a lot of issues with wire fraud. They clone emails, they send emails to your client saying, okay, now it's closing, please, wire the money to this account. Once it's gone, it's gone. You are to advise your seller or your buyer, both sides, if they ever get a request from anyone to wire money, call your escrow company. Don't call the number on the letter. Don't call the number in the email. Call the escrow company that you had the information from before and confirm that this is truly a legitimate request. Because they'll put a number in the email, you call that number and they go, oh yeah, no problem, and your money's gone. Okay, so here's the meat of the class. Date prepared. The only purpose for the date prepared is to identify this contract. It means nothing else. It doesn't have to do with timelines, doesn't have to do with escrow, doesn't have to do with anything else except identify this contract, because when we do counteroffers, when we do other things, we're going to tie it to the purchase agreement dated this date here. So if I started this 3 days ago, that's the date that will be there. This doesn't have to be today's date, doesn't have to be the date it gets signed. It's whatever date I started working on this contract. Okay, who are the buyers? We want to put the buyer's name as they are going to sign their documents, okay? Whether they're going to put, you know, initials, however they want it, that's what we're going to do.
Well, shouldn't their names, when you write the offer, shouldn't their names be written as written on their driver's license?
That would make it easier when they do the notary, okay? But it should really be, I mean, they may always sign with an initial and their driver's license may not have an initial.
Mm-hmm.
So it's however they're really going to sign it. But yes, if their driver's license and their name is like totally different, they're going to have an issue when they go get notarized. As you can see also, you can put 4 buyers in here. Okay? If you have more than 4 buyers, there's a form for that. So, you know, people say, oh, you know, I have 3 buyers. What do I do? This is what you do. You can put them all in there. Okay? The address of the property, the city, the county, the zip code, the parcel number. Make sure this parcel number corresponds to this address. The parcel number is what really drives everything. So if you have the wrong parcel number, you may be selling the wrong property or buying the wrong property. Purchase price. We're going to put a purchase price in here. $1,253,569. Okay, it's going to write out the name. So let's say you go, you know what? I don't know what the price we're going to offer. I'll find it out when I meet with them. Fine, write it in here, write the word out, have them initial everything here. Because when the document is done, we don't know if this was written before they sign it or after they sign it. So with initials, that takes out the issue if we ever have to go to court and say, well, I didn't write that there, that was after I signed. Then the question is, why'd you sign something blank? But that's a whole nother question. If they put initials, there's no issue at this point. Escrow.
I'm sorry, but can you
Yes.
go back to that for just a second? What do we have to initial and why? Or the buyer?
Anything you handwrite needs to be initial.
Oh, got it. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So if it's already pre-written, there's no need for any, and if it's already typed in.
Right. But let's say if I change it or if I don't know what the price is until I meet them and I write it then, anything handwritten needs to be initialed.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay. Escrow could either be a specific date or X amount of days after acceptance. And we're going to talk about what after acceptance is. So typically right now it's 30 to 45 days. Anything shorter than that and you have a loan, talk to the lender, make sure you can do it. Okay. I don't want things in here just to get your offer accepted and then you can't perform, because that causes problems down the line. Okay. Who's representing who?
Question on that. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So my previous offer that I wrote was that the buyer was saying, I will let the seller have 30 to 90 day escrow as long as she needs to find a replacement home. How do you write that in? Can you actually say, because I actually said 30-90, and then I clarified in the terms, I think, escrow to be, you know, and I specified that the 2 end times, whichever is sooner. Was that
Okay.
correct?
No, because escrow needs an actual specific debt number. So you could say 90 days, but you could always close sooner.
Okay,
Okay, if you did 30 days and you need an extension, it becomes issues. So if it's 30 to 90, due to 90 days, escrow can always close sooner, but
Okay.
if you close after, then you need to get an extension.
okay, thank
Okay.
you.
No
Mhm.
problem.
But also Fred, for that, if it was after close of escrow, like, and the seller needed to find a replacement property, I think that's what you said, that the seller, the SPRP needed to be incorporated.
Right, well, this one was, they were gonna give them up to 90 days for escrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're correct, and we'll talk about that if there is, if anything after close of escrow needs a SIP also, not just a seller replacement property.
Right.
Okay, who do we represent? Compass is going to represent the seller. You notice that already gets the seller and the seller's agent. We're going to represent the buyer. That gets filled in. You cannot, if you click this, let's say Compass is representing the seller. Let's see, actually, once that's clicked, I cannot say, that the company's representing both. It's all or nothing. Okay, so let's say this was Century 21, but different companies. I can't say, Compass is representing both, but Ollie's only going to represent the seller. It won't let me do that. So you become a dual agent even though you are not representing both. Century 21 Everest is representing both. So that's the one that a lot of people have an issue trying to understand. Does everyone understand the difference there? Okay. Financing terms, initial deposit. Okay, so this is your EMD money. It should never be more than 3% of the purchase price. Okay, well, you can put whatever you like there. 3% is what is handled in liquidated damages. But this money is going to be tied up from the moment you open up escrow. So make sure that whatever you put here, one, the buyers have it as liquid cash, not something they have to get, that after 3 days, they can wire this money into escrow. Also, it shows how much skin in the game you have. If you put $1,000, someone else puts, $29,000, who has more skin in the game? So agents are looking at this when they're looking at offers, and so are the sellers. Okay? We never want to handle a check. We never want to see a check. We would love it if it is the default, which says electric funds within 3 business days. That means it's going to be wired in. If it's anything else, they need to go to escrow themselves and deliver that check. You are not a messenger. You are never to touch the check. They can't say, escrow's in your same building. Can't you just deliver it free? No, I'm sorry. It is against my company policy to do that. So they would need to do and go forward. Make sure whatever they check, that's how the check is going to be delivered. Okay, increased deposit. I've seen this used a few different ways. So let's say at this point, there's a tenant in the property and there's no showings at all. So you're making an offer contingent on your inspection. So I'll put a little earnest money deposit, and then if I'm accepted, I'll put more money afterwards to make it a full deposit. The other way it's used is, right now I have this, but I know in 5 days I'm going to be getting, a bonus, or I'm going to be getting a windfall, and then I'm going to say, hey, I can put more money in 5 days. So this is the 2 times I've seen increased deposit used. Again, same thing. Whatever the dollar amount is, put it here. So let's say we're going 5,000 here, and then we're going to put 50,000 afterwards. No, not 500,000. Okay. Now, is this an all cash offer? If it is, check this, move on. If it's not, what is the first loan amount? So the first loan amount is whatever your approval letter says. If it's an 80-20 loan, however it is, that's what the loan amount would be. So let's say on this one, it's $750,000 loan amount, okay? You got to identify whether it's a FHA or a VA loan. If you identify those, another form will pop up that needs to be filled out. We don't have a lot of this, but if the owner is going to finance it, you click this and another form will pop up with all the financing issues. I've seen people put in here not to exceed a certain rate, not to exceed a certain point. 99% of the time, these are just counted out, okay? Especially in today's market where rates are changing, you know, if you are that rate sensitive, that may be an issue. But if you're going to put it here, just expect it may be counted out. Is there going to be a second loan? Not many second loans these days, but again, if there was a second loan, it would be here, and again, FHA or VA, however it is. Balance of down payment. So this is what, after the loan, after your earnest money and all that, this is what the buyer needs to come in just for the loan. This doesn't account for closing costs or anything else. So all this is calculated. So it takes your purchase price minus your deposits, minus your first loan, and this is your dollar amount. It should all balance out. If this was a VA loan and it was 100% financing, this might be a negative number. That means he will be getting his earnest money back at the close of escrow, or his earnest money will be applied towards closing costs at the close of escrow. So don't be surprised if this is a negative number for 100% VA financing. Again, buyers, sellers, initials, and we move on.
Does anyone have any questions about page?
Actually, I skipped a point, sorry. Additional financing terms. Okay, so this is used for a few different areas. The first area is if the buyer is requesting a credit for closing costs. So you would put, you know, here, and I think we have a few clauses. Okay, sell it to credit buyer X amount or a dollar amount towards buyer's closing costs. So you'd put that in there, okay, and then you would just fill in, you know, 3% or an X dollar amount. The other thing I've seen here is the escalation clause. Okay, this is a clause that says, I will pay X amount of dollars over your highest offer. Buyers think this is a great thing to use. Sellers really don't like it. Agents really don't like it. It really is very confusing and very hard to justify. So basically, the escalation clause is three parts. One, what is your step value? I'll pay $1,000 over your highest offer. Okay. Two, you need to have a cap. Okay. So I'll pay $1,000 off your highest offer up to $1.2 million. And three, you need to have verification of what the highest offer is. And this is where the issue becomes. Verification is usually like page 1 of an RPA. Not saying this, but some agents may make up a one-page RPA saying, oh, look at that. Just came in $1,000 under your max. Okay, great. Now we have a deal. You know, you bought this property for 1.2. So escalation clauses are very, very, they have a lot of issues. They sound great, sounds fancy, sounds like, oh my God, you know, we're going to, yeah. Think about it very carefully. Write your best offer. Get a counter, write your best offer again, okay? If you put your best offer up front, hopefully you don't get counted. But escalation clauses just open up issues. Then again, what happens if two people have an escalation clause? I mean, it could just keep going up and up and up. Also, With an escalation clause, now we know what your max is, so I can counter you back and say, oh, I'm going to counter you for 1.2, even though I don't have any other offers clearly close to that. So it just opens up a lot of issues. Now, any questions on page 1? Anything, Chris? Nothing?
I don't see anything in the chat box.
Okay. On to page 2. Okay. Verification of down payment and closing costs. Typically, this is sent with your offer. Okay. And again, this is called proof of funds, but not just proof of funds for your down payment. We want to make sure you have proof of funds for your closing cost also, which is typically 3% of the purchase price. So when we're looking at this, I want to see a proof of funds to cover your down payment and 3% of your closing costs. I want to make sure that the proof of funds is in your name, not some company's name or some third party's name. I want to make sure the proof of funds is liquid. It's not some CD that's not going to mature for another 7 months. So those are the things when you as an agent are receiving offers, you're going to be looking at. Also, you as an agent writing an offer, you want to say, hey, where's your proof of funds? Let's look at this. Let's make sure it makes sense. Okay. Appraisal, contingency, and removal. This has been talked about a lot. A lot of people are saying, I'm removing my appraisal because I want this property to get accepted. A lot of counters are saying, remove your appraisal contingency. Understand what removing your appraisal contingency means. Okay. Means that if this doesn't appraise at the value of your purchase price, you either need to come up with the difference, okay, which could be significant, depends on where the appraisal is and where your offer is, okay? You cannot say, oh, well, I can't get my loan now because I can't get my appraisal. They've separated the two. If you can't get your loan and the only reason you can't get your loan is for your appraisal, then you've lost your earnest money deposit, okay? So be very careful with this. People are throwing this around like it's nothing. This means a lot. I mean, I'm in a deal right now where someone removed their appraisal contingency and there's almost a $75,000 difference. They're trying to fight the appraisal, but if they don't, I'll go back on the market and their earnest money deposit now becomes the seller's. So be very, very careful how this is written. Loan applications. Within 3 days, you should have a loan application. Typically, you already have a loan application going on, and you're giving them proof of their loan as a letter attached. Loan contingency, okay? So, is a contingency on its agreement unless otherwise agreed in writing. If there is no appraisal contingency or the appraisal contingency be waived or removed, then failure of the property to appraise at the purchase price does not entitle buyer to exercise the cancellation right. So like I said, if you can't get a loan and the only reason you can't get a loan is because you don't appraise and you remove that appraisal, you've lost all your contingencies. So again, be very careful, advise your clients, this is what it means. And if they say, no, this is what I want to do, that's fine. But have that conversation with them. Loan contingency removal, 21 days after acceptance, unless changed. If you're going to change it, talk to your lender. Make sure they can do it, okay? If you have a 90-day escrow like Liliana did, loan contingency at 21 days doesn't make sense because you almost have 2 months after your loan contingency. A lot of things can happen. So make this make sense. I know everyone wants to get their offer accepted, but you also want to protect your buyer, okay? You don't want to do stuff that's going to get an offer accepted, but put your buyer in potential harm, okay? So anything less, talk to your lender, make sure they can do it. Also, there are some companies out there like Zillow and other companies that are requiring you to use their forms to write offers. Be very careful when you do that, because on their forms, it becomes a passive removal as opposed to an active removal. So what that means, With the CAR forms, I need to actively do something. I need to fill out a contingency removal form for the thing to be removed. With Zillow, on the 21st day, it's gone. You don't have that contingency anymore. I didn't do anything to remove it. It's passive. It just happens. Unless before that I said something. But so be very careful between active and passive removals. Passive removals used to be big when we did REOs because the banks would do that. But now again, it's coming up with a lot of these other companies that are requiring them you to write their offers in their forms. So just be careful what you're writing and review everything. If you are using Zillow, I also advise your buyers to seek an attorney to review the forms. We are not attorneys. We really cannot give that type of advice. Loan contingency. Hey, means I don't care what happens. You don't care if I don't get a loan. I'm still buying this property. This is not an all cash deal. This says I still need a loan, but I'm not having a contingency for it. So just make sure you understand what you're checking. Don't say I'm removing all contingencies just to get the offer. Okay? There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Lender limits and buyer credits. You know how we did before where I said I'd like 3% back? So let's say you find a lot of issues with the house and you wanted to closing a credit. The only way you can get money is through credits for closing costs. But if your credits exceed what your closing costs are, you're not going to get any money. Your buyer's not going to get any money. So you may agree and the seller may agree to $50,000 in closing credits. But if your closing credits are only $25,000, you're only getting $25,000. So if you have a big number, work with your manager, work with your lender to figure out what are the closing credits. Maybe we need to reduce the purchase price and closing credits to come up to a number that'll work for us. Okay? So again, be very careful. Don't make promises and then all of a sudden find out the buyer's expecting this money and it ain't happening. Also, let the buyer know they're not going to get a physical check or anything. It's going to be a credit to their closing costs, so they need to come in with less money. It's not like now I have $10,000 to go buy carpet. No, they have $10,000 less of closing costs, so hopefully they had that $10,000 someplace to go buy the carpet. Buyer stated financing. So I'm accepting this offer on whatever you guys are writing up there. So if you're telling me it's conventional, you're telling me it's a cash deal, then all of a sudden you go, you know what? I got to go FHA. Well, now I need a loan. That's up to you. Okay? I accepted this offer as is. I'm not going to do anything specific to help you get an FHA loan. If you can't do it, again, you've breached a contract. So whatever you put up there, don't put it up there just to get an offer accepted. Don't say I'm going conventional with 20% down and then go FHA with 3.5% down. Okay? If you can close a FHA with 3.5% down, that's great. But if you can't, that becomes an issue now. Sale of buyer's property. So does the buyer need to sell a piece of property before they can buy this property? So you would check this box here, and then a COP form would be created, and the COP form we'll be talking about on Wednesday. But you got to protect your buyer. If they cannot buy this property unless they sell their property they live in right now, they need to have a COP contingent on purchase or contingent on sale of buyer's property. Okay? Just protect them. That's all we can do is we can protect them. We can't, don't say, oh, it's okay. Your property would definitely sell, no problem. Things happen. If they need to sell it, just fill out the box. If your offer is accepted, it's accepted. If it's not, it's not, but you've protected your buyer. Okay? Are we adding any different addendums here? Are we doing a septic well property addendum? Are we doing a short sale addendum? Does this need a court confirmation? You know, we include the Century 21 Everest addendum, which we are talking about later. We put it here to make sure that escrow knows about it, because this is very important for the 395 and other issues. If it's not here and you take it out, you got to make sure escrow knows about the Century Everest addendum. Otherwise, someone will be paying that 395. Buyer's inspection advisory is part of this contract. I do not add the statewide buyer and seller. That's 14 pages of information. REO, if you are buying an REO property, I would add that. If you're buying a trust, I would add that. If you're buying a probate, I would add that. If you're doing a short sale, yes. The only one I would not add is statewide buyer, because that's just 14 pages. And I would wait till we actually have an offer accepted someplace. All these others are ones that are informing the buyer of something. You know, what is an REO? What are my issues with an REO? What is a probate? What is a trust? What's a short sale? Okay. Other terms. Okay. Again, you could put your escalation here if you'd like. Other terms could be anything, not financial, but other terms of the contract. You know, like in Liliana's case, you know, buyer to cooperate with seller, you know, up to 90 days close of escrow, can close sooner, you know, buyer willing to rent for X amount of days, whatever it is that the buyer's agreeing to help the seller or to make his offer a little bit stronger, you can put here.
We have a question.
Question.
Okay. Let's see. Jenny's asking, in other words, should we include C21 Everest addendum, or is that necessary? It is necessary.
Well, okay, so there's two.
I think it's necessary.
Okay, it's definitely necessary to be part of the deal. The problem is if you're writing 5 or 6 offers, you don't want to keep having your buyers keep signing the Century 21 Everest addendum. So I understand that issue. So, but it needs to be included someplace. You know, once you accept the offer, have your buyers sign it and move forward.
Oh, I guess when the SBSA is incorporated, you can then include the addendum.
Right, and the SBSA you may get from the other side anyway.
Yeah.
With their disclosures. But the addendum definitely needs to be incorporated, definitely needs to be in escrow. It's just in today's environment where we're writing so many offers that are not getting accepted, because the Everest addendum is specific to the property.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have to write, you know, each one over and over again. So, I mean, that's, you know, normal conditions, yes, make it part of the thing. But in today's environment, it's a little bit different.
I know. You guys are working so hard for your buyers
Yes.
right now.
Okay. Inspection reports and certificates. So NHD report is a requirement. It's not something that can be waived, okay? It is the seller's responsibility to disclose all the natural hazard disclosures to the buyer, okay? So I, as a buyer, want this because I want to know, am I in a high fire zone? Am I in a flood zone? You know, is there Belarus? What other things do I need to know about this property? Am I near pipelines? Am I near a prison? Am I near, you know, an airport? So all those things need to be disclosed. We typically have the seller pay for it because it's part of their disclosure. But I've seen in today's market, a lot of buyers are paying for it. It's $95. You know, we use my seller's choice. You can order it online. So if you want to make your offer a little more attractive, you can click the buyer and let them pay for it. Okay. Other reports. Do I want a termite report? Okay. Do I want a, you know, certificate of compliance report in LA City? Okay. Do I want a sewer lateral report in some areas in Ventura? You know, any report that you are going to require that you want the seller to pay, put for it here. Any report that you are going to pay for, do not put here. Because if it's here, it now becomes potentially the lender can ask for it. So if I'm paying for a termite report, I'm not going to say buyer to pay for termite report, because now the lender can ask for that termite report, and if it's not clear, there might be an issue. I'm not going to put buyer to pay for home inspection. I'm advising my buyer they're going to pay for home inspection, but I don't need to put it in this contract, because anything in this contract becomes privy to the lender. So if the buyer is paying for it, do not put it. If the seller is paying for it, definitely put it. Government requirements of retrofit. Okay, so the first one is smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, water heater bracing. This is all required that the seller needs to do. So I always check seller to pay for all this. Okay, seller to pay cost of compliance of any other minimum mandatory government inspections and reports are required as condition of closing escrow under any law. This is an issue in LA City because there is a retrofit inspection that needs to be done, and they need to do that. So again, I would say seller. I'd put seller here, but I've seen people countering out where it's not required by saying, hey, the seller's not going to pay for this. Seller to pay the cost of compliance from retrofit standards required. Again, I would say seller in the city of LA. Other areas, it's up to you. I would always put seller and let it be counted out if needed. Okay, escrow and title. So I love escrow and title. You put both, and there's no 50-50. It's each to pay their own. Okay, so the seller will pay their closing escrow fees, the buyer will pay their escrow fees. Again, in today's market, I've seen it where the buyer's paying both sides of the escrow fees. It's, about 1,000 something. They're figuring, hey, makes my offer more attractive. Why not? Let's do it. And again, escrow holders shall be seller to choose. Not seller's choice, because there is an actual seller's choice escrow company. Seller to choose. Do not, well, in a normal environment, you can always put your own escrow company here. Hopefully they'll accept it. Most likely they won't. Most likely they're already working with an escrow company. But it's always seller to choose if you're not putting your own. Owner's title policy. Seller is going to pay for the owner's title policy. And again, seller to choose. Okay, county and transfer tax. Most counties have a transfer tax. Seller to pay for that. City, not every city has a transfer tax. LA City does, Santa Clarita does not. I don't know about, Simi Valley and those places.
Valley does not.
There's none in Ventura that have it?
Maybe the city of Ventura, but I know Simi Valley and Moore Park do not.
Okay, so it depends again. If there is, check. If you're not sure, check seller, and can always be denied. Seller to pay for homeowner association transfer fee. Okay, so when the seller sells a property to a buyer, there is a transfer fee. These are not documents. There is a transfer fee. Seller typically pays for that. This one used to be a choice. It is no longer a choice. Seller shall pay for HOA fees for preparing documents required to be delivered. So there is a set of documents that are required, and there are a set of auxiliary documents that the buyers like to have sometimes. If you want those, that's 5. Here, if you say seller, again, most likely may be counted because this is something that's not required. It's something that your buyer would like. So they're going to say, hey, no, sorry, buyer's going to pay for that. Buyer to pay for HOA certification fee. This is a fee that a lot of lenders require to get the loan. They have to have certification for the HOA, and this is a buyer fee. Seller to pay, but yes.
Sorry. So are you saying that the number 5, seller shall pay HOA fees for preparing all documents? Is that an optional? It's not a required item at all? So both parties can just opt out from it?
What was that?
They don't want it?
Okay, so there are two sets of documents. One is the required documents that you need to be able to close escrow. These are not required documents. There's actually, if you look in,
Oh, I saw that. I saw that before you went to the other screen. I saw that there are other documents. I see. Okay.
correct. Yeah, so there are other documents, and there's a list of what the required documents are and what the non-required documents are.
I see. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. So, and like I say, most likely it's going to be counted for the non-required documents, and it doesn't affect the escrow at all. Okay. A private transfer fee. Some new home builders way back when did what's called a private transfer fee. So every time that property is transferred, even fifth, sixth, seventh time, some nonprofit organization set up by the builder gets a percentage of this deal. It's usually like, less than 1%, but there is some fee that is associated. This will be disclosed on your preliminary title report, so you'll be able to find it. But again, seller shall pay for that. Here it's seller shall pay for anything else. So seller shall pay for, like I say in LA City, section 9 clearance, or a 9A it's called. So these are other things that the seller is going to pay for. Home warranty. Okay, so this is very important. A lot of people have been waiving their home warranty. I'm going to tell you what we should do and then tell you why the other options. We're going to have the seller pay for it, and you're going to have a set amount not to exceed. Okay, and you'll look at whatever home warranty you pick. We usually basically have 3. It's either Fidelity, Old Republic, or First American, because they all offer CREST policies. And we're going to say CREST policy and buyer to select options. Okay, so the buyer's going to say, hey, I want AC, or there's a pool and a spa. I also want the refrigerator. So they can select whatever options they want up to the dollar amount. Anything over the dollar amount, the buyer is going to be responsible to pay the difference. Here's the issue of waiving a home warranty. Our E&O insurance gives us a reduced deductible if there's a home warranty associated with the property. So if we don't have a home warranty, whether the seller or the buyer buy it, and we have a lawsuit that we need to use our E&O insurance, you will not get that reduced deductible. And that could be substantial. I don't know the numbers right now. We're still working on it, but there is a difference. So you always want to have a home warranty. It protects the seller from the buyer saying, hey, the water heater went out 2 weeks after I bought this property. You have a home warranty. You call it a home warranty. As long as your inspection said everything worked, you're covered, you're fine. So it protects the seller, it protects the buyer, it gives them confidence. I've had a home warranty on my house for years. It's the best thing in the world. I call them, anything wrong, plumbing, electrical, they come out, $75, they fix it.
Question? Sorry.
Yes.
On the home warranty, so are you saying even if the buyer refuses the home warranty to sweeten up the offer, to make the offer look better, can you then say buyer shall pay for the home warranty?
Yep, you can say buyer can pay for
The
it.
buyer or seller is on, it's okay for our E&O, right?
Right. You can have the buyer pay for it. Or if the buyer says, I really don't want to pay for it, you can say, hey, what? I'll give it to you as a gift with the buyer, and then you credit the buyer.
Right,
Okay.
but what I'm saying is it's better to have the buyer pay for it, even if the buyer says, I'll get my own, than to not have, than to refuse to have it at all, right?
Right. If they're going to get their own, they should do it here so it becomes part of the contract.
So that way it is still, it's still going to be part of the E&O protection, right?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question.
Someone's breaking up.
Here.
Nina, You're breaking up. I can't
If
understand you.
we say the seller will pay, say they say $500. Can you hear me? Yes.
Barely. Go ahead.
Okay. If we say that the seller will pay for the home warranty not to exceed, then the buyers don't have to buy the home warranty.
Okay. So let's say the seller says the seller not to exceed 550.
Yeah.
And then the buyer chooses all the options and stuff, and it comes up to 600. The buyer would have to pay the $50 difference. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but like, let's say if it's less than 500.
Then they don't get a credit. Then the buyer doesn't get anything. So let's say
Okay.
you say up to 550 and it comes in at 500, then the seller pays 500.
Yeah, but the buyer will choose the home warranty.
The buyer chooses the home warranty, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's where you'd put it here, whatever your home warranty is that you use or you have a relationship with.
I see.
I'm sorry, I had a phone call. What is it, Chris?
Wait, what?
Okay,
What?
Nina, you need to mute, please. Oh, hang on. And then,
What was the question, Liliana?
Sorry,
Crest. What is Crest?
yeah, what is the CREST? Because I got a phone call and I missed that part.
Okay, CREST is a add-on to your policy. Currently, we had a CREST E&O policy. So if we had CREST, you even get more of a discount and the seller gets extra protection. They'll get, I think it's 25,000 or 50,000 in E&O coverage and a few other things. We're renegotiating our E&O insurance, so this may all change.
Okay, and typically, thank you. And typically, since the different home warranties vary in price, what would you typically see here for, let's say, up to 25 or 3,000 square foot home, not to exceed value? What would you typically put in to kind of encompass all? Like
With a pool, I usually put in up to 700.
up to
and I'm covered.
7 with a pool, but without a pool?
550, 600.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And like I said, whatever the policy is, if it's less, then that's what they pay less. So,
Okay.
okay. Notice to buyer and seller. This is something I want everyone to understand. Items listed as included or excluded in the MLS flyers or marketing materials are not included in the purchase price or excluded from the sale unless specified here. So the MLS says, barbecue and back is excluded. Unless it's in this contract here, that barbecue stays. The MLS is just an advertisement. So you as a buyer, if you want to make sure something stays, make sure you put it here. You as a seller, when you're reviewing it as an agent, if you know things are going to be excluded, make sure they are listed here. This is the only thing that counts, not the MLS, not your listing contract. This here is what makes the deal. Okay? So the first thing is stoves. If it's a built-in stove, just check it, it's fine. If it's a freestanding stove, definitely check it. Those can be gone. Okay? Refrigerators, built-in refrigerators, standalone refrigerators, if you really love their refrigerator, check it. All refrigerators, the one in the garage. If this is checked, all refrigerators are staying. If you're going to counter saying, we'll leave the one in the kitchen but not the garage, make sure you put it in the counter. Washer and dryers. Again, if it's checked, they're staying. If they're not staying, put it in the counter. The following additional items, okay? Anything else that you see there, beautiful chandeliers, exquisite fans, anything that you think may be going that your buyers love and they want it to stay, make sure you put it here. So this way, it becomes part of the record. Okay? Do we have any leased or liened items? Okay? Do we have a solar panel that's on a lease? Do we have a, water softener that's on a lease underneath the sink? Do we have reverse osmosis that's on a lease from Culligan? All that stuff needs to be disclosed. Anything not included, okay? This one, if you see in the MLS and you definitely want to make sure it's gone, put it here. I, as a seller, if I know I want something that I'm taking and I don't see it here, I'm going to counter, make sure it's here. Okay, the MLS is just an advertisement. This contract and the counter offers is what counts when we go to a court of law saying, hey, that refrigerator should have stayed. It's not here. You owe me a refrigerator. Okay, does the buyer intend to live in the property after? Yes or no? Seller occupied or vacant property. Okay, so typically, if nothing's checked, it's 6 p.m. on the recorded date. Not when we record, it's 6 p.m. after confirmation of recorded. So if you got confirmation at 11 o'clock, you still do not have possession till 6 p.m. that date, unless everyone agrees to do it earlier. If you need extra days, let's say the seller says I need 2 days, okay? Then 2 days after close of escrow. That's when you get possession. Everyone initials.
Hey, Fred, before we go on for the, I'm wondering, we've been on for an hour, and would it be okay if we took a 5-minute break?
Okay, fine. You got 5 minutes.
And
Come back at 11:10.
Sorry,
Or
I'm
10:10.
the questions all the time. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Going back to like a page up about the gosh, what was I going to ask? I'm multitasking here. I'm writing 2 offers and I'm listening to this and I'm answering my client's questions all at the same time. But there was a question about deposit. Can you scroll back up a little bit?
Earnest money deposit?
Yeah, go back,
Okay.
go back, go back.
This
Yeah,
deposit right here.
top of this page, I think. Go back.
Well, there's no deposit after this page.
The initial deposit right here on finance terms, number 3.
Right.
So I had a question about, so I'm writing a cash offer and my client asked me, well, so what is, I don't know if I actually, never mind about the deposit, but her question was, what is the closing costs for an all cash transaction when there's no loan? When there's a loan, I typically say you'll probably have around 2%, but I'm never really sure about that. Can you tell me a little more?
Okay, so for sellers, it's 3% if they have a loan. I don't know if they don't have a loan, but if they don't have a loan, then escrow can give you an exact amount because there's no lender
That's
fees.
what I ended up telling her, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious for a buyer, for a cash buyer, what are the
For cash buyer, I mean, like I said, I only do 3% for closing costs with a loan. I don't know about a cash buyer.
Okay, so I told her I wouldn't know exactly, but I told her escrow can give her a net sheet. So I guess
Correct.
that was the right answer, but I felt like I should at least know the ballpark, what are her approximate closing costs.
Yeah, I mean, you could say maybe 2% for a cash buyer. I don't know.
That's what I told her, but I said I'll have escrow do exact, more exact figuring,
Right.
not exact because it's all just estimations. But okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
So I'm going to run, and I'm sorry I won't be able to be here because I do have those 2 offers to write, and I have a ton of things going on. But I'm looking forward to the recording. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. We're going to take a break now.
Oh, I thought we were taking a break already.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to pause it now. So I'm going to take a break now.
Oh, yeah, you're actually going to stop recording. Okay, fine.
Yes.
Back to fun. All right. So we got exclude and exclude from sales. So let's go on to seller to remain in possession. So if you know the seller's going to remain in possession, anything past 0 days, so anything past close of escrow, we're going to click this box, and it's going to create what's called a seller in possession form. And that just covers who's covered for insurance, what happens if, who's paying for electricity, who's paying for utilities, all that's explained in this. This is for less than 30 days. Anything more than 30 days, it becomes a lease. So all this stuff needs to be negotiated before. You can't, be in the escrow and say, all of a sudden, oh, my seller needs, 15 days of rent back. This needs to be negotiated before to make sure it's part of the contract. Is the tenant going to remain in possession? So let's say there's a tenant there and they remain in possession. You can take it over. Again, there's another form for that. Outlines who gets their rent, who gets the deposit that was sent in there, how's this all handled. So all this needs to be documented. Okay? Other lead-based paint disclosure. So if your house was built prior to a certain year, you need to have a lead-based paint disclosure. That needs to be disclosed. Do you know of any lead-based paint? If you do, was it taken care of in a correct manner? All that needs to be addressed. Also on the SBQ, that needs to be filled out, and the TDS. So these are two forms that we're going to talk about at a later time. This talks about the agent visual inspection disclosure. Again, another form we're going to talk about, but this is something both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent need to do their visual inspection. Okay? You cannot waive the lead disclosure. It's prohibited by law. So even if the buyer says, oh, that's okay, I really don't need it, no, it needs to be disclosed. Okay? TDS. So transfer disclosure statement needs to be submitted and it needs to be complete. So complete TDS is the TDS, all the boxes checked, all the explanations given, plus the seller's avid. If we don't have both pieces, it is not a complete TDS. When you get both pieces, it then creates what's called a 5-day right of rescission. Okay? So it's very important to get your avid done as quickly as possible from the seller side. The buyer side avid is not as critical, but it is also important to be done. You should be doing your avid when you're doing your home inspection. The Nhd disclosure we talked about, it's a requirement that's done. Who pays for it's now more negotiable, but it basically says what type of fire zones I'm in, what type of flooding zones I'm in, what type of earthquake zones. This is all required. Withholding taxes. If the seller is not a citizen, then they need to complete what's called a FERPTA. Escrow handles all of that. So that's not something you need to be aware of. Escrow will take care of that. Megan's Law database disclosure. If you know it, you got to disclose it. Do not go in Megan's database and look for pedophiles in the area that you're buying a property. Because once you know it, you need to disclose it. You tell your client, if they're interested, this is where they can go look for it. But you are not to look for it because once you know it, you need to disclose it. Notice regarding gas and hazardous liquid transmission pipelines. Again, this is part of the Nhd. That is why the Nhd is so important. Otherwise, a seller has to figure out all these things by themselves and disclose it. Am I in a condominium? If I am, then I have 7 days to disclose that and then get the HOA docs to the buyer. Condition of property. Okay. I love it when sellers say, I'm selling as is. Well, it's in the contract. It is as is. If you write it as is in your MLS, the first thing that comes to my mind is what's wrong with the property. But everything is as is. You could ask for a request for repairs. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to even acknowledge it. So this is just saying, we understand it's as is. You still need to disclose any known material facts and defects. You can't hide things. If you know your foundation is cracking, You can't say, well, I'm selling it as is, I'm not going to tell you anything. No, you still need to disclose everything. Buyer's investigation on property. The buyer is advised to do all their investigations. They have 17 days, unless you change that date, to do all their investigations. They can have any type of investigations they want as long as it's non-intrusive. I mean, you can't break walls open to see what's behind the wall. So you can do as many investigations as you want. You can get as many reports as you like. You can do your request for repairs, but you need to do all your investigations till you are satisfied. This is the house I want, and I know exactly all the issues with the house. Even if the seller's not going to do anything, at least you as a buyer know the condition of the property that you are buying. In today's market, the property may have been on the market before. They may give you an inspection report from someone else. You can take that inspection report, but I will still advise my buyers to do their own inspections, because if there is an issue with the inspection report, you have no one to go to, because that inspector had the relationship with the last buyer. So if the inspector missed something and you want to sue or go to court about something, you don't have any recourse at that point. You need your own inspection for that. Okay, seller needs to make the property available for all buyers' inspection within reason. I mean, you have to give them some notice. You have to give some time frames. I mean, you just can't pop up and say, hey, I'm here to do my inspections. So this needs to be negotiated with the agents to say, hey, my buyer would like to do an inspection tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Is that okay? They're going to need 3 or 4 hours. Perfect, no problem. But again, they can't say, no, sorry, we're not letting you do any inspections. But again, on the other side, you just can't show up and say, hey, I need to do my inspection. Seller shall have water, gas, electricity all turned on. This is very important for inspections and appraisal. If the utilities are not turned on, they can't do a full inspection, and the appraiser will have to come back, charge your buyer $150 just to confirm that the stove works or the water heater has a pilot light. So make sure that your clients leave all the utilities turned on. Okay, buyer indemnity. Buyer shall keep the property free and clear of liens. So if you don't pay your inspectors and stuff and they put a lien on the property, that becomes an issue. So make sure you pay all your inspectors, whatever you're doing. Buyers, repair all damage arising from the buyer's investigation. Like I said, this is not invasive. We can't poke holes in the wall. We can't, disconnect things just to see how they work and stuff. Okay. Title and vesting. This, we can only advise them to seek out the form that we give them, how to hold title. We cannot say, oh, you know what, most people hold title this way. Title affects a lot of things. It affects taxes, it affects, if someone dies. So they need to get advice from a CPA and a lawyer on how to properly hold title. We cannot advise them. Escrow cannot advise them. Okay. Time periods. Seller has 7 days to get all the reports to you as a buyer. Okay. If they don't, your agent needs to work with them to either do a notice to perform, but you have 7 days, because then you only have 17 days to review all the stuff that they've given you. So if they give it to you on day 16, and they can say, oh, yep, sorry, day 17's here, remove your contingencies, that's not fair to you. So have your listing agent work with the other, or your buyer's agent work with the other side. I know everyone hates notice to perform, but you know what? Sometimes you need to protect everybody. Buyer 70 days due to all their inspections. They can do a request for repairs. The seller does not need to respond to requests for repairs. Okay? Buyer may request that seller make repairs or take other actions. Seller has no obligation to agree or to respond. That is a key. Very few sellers don't respond, but if your seller doesn't respond, that's the answer. They're not going to do any repairs. Okay, so again, have your agent confirm that they received it, or have you confirm that you received it. If they received it and they're responding, you know what the answer is. Continuation of contingency. So let's say you're coming up on day 17, you know I'm not going to make it, you need a few more days. Make sure you do an extension of time and say, hey, can I have a few more days? They don't have to give it to you, but if you don't ask for it, it's better. It's worse than, oh, I'm past day 17 now, can I have one? Be upfront. You know, communication is the key to all these deals. Be upfront saying, hey, my inspector took a little bit longer than expected, or I couldn't schedule this guy, he was busy. Can I have 3 more days? Seller agrees, you have 3 more days to remove your contingency. If not, they can give you a notice to perform, and then that's a 2-day notice. So you have 2 days from the day after to remove, or they can cancel the deal. Okay, removal of contingencies with offer. I suggest you never, ever check this box. If buyer removes any contingency without an adequate understanding of the property, they are acting against the advice of the broker. We would never advise our buyers to remove all contingencies prior to any inspections. So the seller has the right to cancel if you remove your contingencies on in a timely manner, according to the dates. They have to give you a notice to perform, a notice for buyer to perform, and then if you still do not remove it, they can give you a cancellation. The seller can also, the buyer can also give a notice to perform to the seller if they have not given their reports in 7 days. So that's a notice to perform also. So everyone is just keeping to the contract. It's not a nasty word, oh my God, I'm giving a notice to perform. It's just, I'm protecting my client, I'm managing the contract, these are the time frames. Okay? Effective cancellation of deposits. So this is the big one. It takes only one side to cancel a transaction. The buyer can cancel, the seller can cancel as long as he has the right to cancel, but the seller has less rights to cancel than the buyer. But the buyer can cancel as long as he has his rights, and it's a unilateral cancel. The release of deposit from escrow is a mutual. Everyone has to agree on that. So if the buyer cancels, never tell your buyer, oh yeah, you'll get your money back. You may not get your money back right away. If you haven't removed your contingencies and you have good right to cancel, you have a good case to get your money back, but nothing is guaranteed. You'd have to, if the seller doesn't agree, escrow holds your money until either side brings a legal action to try to get your money returned. So again, never tell your buyer, oh yes, no problem. If you cancel, you have your contingencies, you'll get your money back. You eventually may get your money back, but it's not a guarantee. And then they go, well, you told me I'd get my money back. So just let them know those are possible issues. Final verification of property. This is what's called a VP. This is to be done 5 days prior to the close of escrow. It's not a contingency of the sale. If you don't do it, you don't do it. Okay? But this is to confirm the property is maintained in the exact condition that it was when you bought it. Also, any repairs that have been agreed upon has been completed. It's not a time to find new issues. It's not a time to do a new inspection. This is just saying the property's in the same condition and any repairs that I've asked for have been done. If the property is not in the same condition, document it on your VP, submit it to the seller, and at that point, you either need to figure out how the issue is going to be resolved. You're going to have to put a hold on close of escrow, whatever needs to be done. but it has to be something like, oh my God, now there's a hole in the wall that wasn't there before. Okay, it's not like, oh, I did a new inspection, now I found a leaky faucet. Okay, so it's basically not to find new things, just to find things that saying the property is not in the same condition as before. Repairs need to be performed. You need to have a written statement including the repairs performed by the seller and provide copies of any invoices and paid receipts. This is important for your proof if you ever have an insurance claim and the homeowner just says, well, that's a pre-existing condition. You go, well, no, here's where they fixed it. Here's where it's resolved. Move forward. Okay? Proration of property taxes and other items. So depending when you close escrow, sometimes the buyer may have to pay some property tax, some fees. It's all going to be prorated. You'll get it at the end. But also on the buyer side, let your buyers know they will get what's called a supplementary assessment that for the tax roll, and it's not coming out of escrow. It's not coming out of your impound account. This needs to be paid. Tell them don't ignore it, even if their taxes are paid out of an impound account. Okay, broker's compensation is negotiable. Everything the seller is basically paying the compensation. Scope of duty is what we do, does not guarantee performance, shall not be responsible for determining the fair market value. We do not determine the fair market value. We do not say, hey, you should offer this amount. Hey, you should list your property this. We represent the facts. We give you a CMA. We'll say, what do you think you should offer? This is the condition. This is what's out there right now. I've talked to the listing agent. He said he has 5 offers. They're all over asking. What would you like to do? If the seller says, or the buyer says, hey, I'd like to offer this, that's great. But we're not saying this is what you should offer, because if they don't get it, then you go, well, you told me that's what I should offer. So it's always their decision whether the list price or the purchase price needs to be their decision. Representative capacity. This means that the person signing the documents is a person, but they're representing something else. They're either representing an LLC, they're either representing a trust, they're either representing a corporation. So they're signing it, but they're signing it in the name of a trust or an LLC or a corporation. So the RCSD, which is another form that we'll talk about later, outlines what is the entity that is signing and who's allowed to sign for this. Joint escrow instructions. So what's going to happen is escrow gets the purchase agreement, escrow gets all the counter offers, they put it all together and they come up with their interpretation of what the escrow instructions is. You get a copy of it, the seller gets a copy of it, the buyer gets a copy of it, the listing agent gets a copy of it. Review the escrow instructions. Make sure it's exactly what you think it's going to be. Make sure the close of escrow is when you think the close of escrow is. Make sure that whoever's paying for what is identified in the contract. Okay, this now becomes the real contract. So make sure everything in there is accurate. Okay, remedies. So liquidated damages. So what liquidated damages is, and that's why we talked about the earnest money deposit. So liquidated damages says, I agree, both the buyer and the seller have to agree to this, that if we have an issue and we go into this and the maximum amount that I can exposure for the buyer is 3% of the funds or the earnest money deposit. So if you put less than 3%, that's all the seller can get. If you put more than 3%, the seller can only get 3%. So, but everyone has to agree to it. If the buyer signs and the seller doesn't, or the seller signs and the buyer doesn't, then it doesn't become part of the contract. So this is a all or nothing. Everyone needs to agree that the maximum exposure is 3%. If the seller doesn't sign and they decide to pursue a case, they now need to prove what their damages are and that would be, there's no maximum to that as long as they can prove this is the damages I have from you breaching your contract. So mediation. Mediation is now included. Mediation is where both parties get together. They have a mediator. The mediator is there to have everyone discuss their issues and come up to a solution. The mediator is not going to provide a solution. I'm a mediator for Ventura County Court for small claims. I get both parties together. I have them discuss it. I may ask questions, getting them to look at each other's side, but they're the ones who need to come up with the decision. If they can't come up with the decision, then mediation is done and no solution is given. Then you go to arbitration. Arbitration needs to be agreed to. Arbitration is one step below a court. It's you go in front of an arbitrator, you both present your evidence, you both present your case, and at that point, the arbitrator makes a decision. So the mediator, you guys make the decision together, the arbitrator, they make the decision. And again, this needs to be agreed to by all parties. If one party agrees and one party doesn't, arbitration is not part of the contract. Arbitration is a lot cheaper than going to court and a lot quicker. Arbitration is a little bit more expensive and longer than mediation. So just depends what the case is and where you want to go. Selection of service providers. The broker does not guarantee the performance of any vendors that we have. That is why whenever we recommend anyone, we at least try to give at least 3 recommendations for a home inspector, for a home warranty. We want the buyer or the seller to choose that. We're not saying that we are representing anyone or we're not guaranteed their performance. MLS. Brokers are authorized to put stuff into the MLS, apply on close of escrow to sales price, and everything is updated in the MLS and becomes public information. Until it's closed, the sales price is not public information. It is only public information once it is closed. Attorney fees, depends who's paying for the attorney fees. Again, depends if we have arbitration, mediation, and the contract. Time is of the essence. We all agree that time is of the essence, and that's why we always have timelines, and we try to live up to those timelines. So here's some definitions. Acceptance means the time the offer or final counteroffer is accepted in writing. So if you have 2 counteroffers, it's the time the last counteroffer is signed. That is when you have acceptance. That is days. Days means calendar days, okay? The last day performance cannot be on a weekend. So if you have a, notice of, let's say you have 17 days for close of S or removal of contingency. If that falls on a Saturday, it goes to the next business day, which be a Monday, unless Monday's a legal holiday. The days start, day 1 is the day after acceptance, and acceptance is signature of everyone signed. So if everyone signs their contracts today, tomorrow would be day 1 in terms of calculations. Expiration of offer. Right now it's 3 days. In today's market, you may want to extend it, talk to the listed agent and see when are they going to review offers. Because if it's not extended, then technically this is a dead offer. They can still move forward with it if they decide to, but otherwise it is a dead offer and you would have to do a new extension. Acceptance. If we accept it, we sign. If we accept it with a counteroffer, make sure you check this box and make sure you put the date of the counteroffer, whether it's a single counteroffer or a multiple counteroffer. And this is where you would use additional signature addendum for those other 2 signers that we had. Because if you look here, we only have buyer 1 and buyer 2. So if we need additional signers for 3 and 4, you check this box, additional signer addendum shows up. Okay. All this information needs to be completed. Presentation of offer. In today's market, I would definitely have this initial when you presented it. If you reject it, I would also have this initial and have, the seller was offered by, was rejected. It's just becoming common courtesy to let the other side of their offer was rejected, not just leave them in limbo and, they don't know anything. If you're not going to counter and you're not going to do anything, please let them know. I mean, there's even some examples of nice emails saying, sorry, you had a great offer. Unfortunately, the seller decided to go for a different offer. It's just, you guys as buyers, you're buyer's agents, you're working your tail off. It's just nice to know, hey, okay, my offer didn't get accepted. I can let my buyer know, as opposed to your buyer saying, hey, did they get back to you? Hey, did they get back to you? Just puts you in an uncomfortable position. Buyer's inspection advisory. This is, again, what we talked about. We want them to inspect everything, do their inspections, roof, foundation, plumbing, square footage and boundaries. We are just doing approximations. We are not saying this is exactly 1,256 square feet. That number came from someplace, whether it be a tax assessor or an assessment. We're destroying pens. Do your inspections. If you're on a hill, do your soil stability. Water and utilities, well systems, environmental hazards, fire hazard, and other insurance. Make sure your property is insurable. Talk to your insurance agent right away and get a insurability that, yes, this property is insurable and I can afford the payments. Because the property may be insurable, but because of the location, the payments may be so outrageous that you can't afford it and you're going to need to back out of the deal. If you're buying a condo or if you're buying something to turn it into an Airbnb or a rental, make sure your city and county restrictions don't have an issue with that. Okay? We are not the experts as agents. Your buyer needs to do their due diligence. If they want to do something like that, tell them to check out with this city or county or the HOA to see that. I mean, we had one deal where, the HOA said you cannot do a rental for 1 year. The buyer bought it thinking he was going to be able to rent it out the next day. Again, do your due diligence, look into everything. The answers should not come from you. You should just guide them to where they need to search the answers and get the answers. Okay, Consumer Privacy Act and advisory. Everyone who's been on the web now knows that, they're clicking, cookies, sell my information, don't sell my information. So we're just saying, we're going to put your information in the MLS. We have no control of it. Once it gets in the MLS, once your pictures are out there, we have no control of what's going to happen to that. Once it's sold, we have no control of what's going to happen with that information. It all becomes public information at that point. So we're just making you aware of that. What else are we going over? Oh, disclosure of home warranty and inspection. Well, let me go to one other one before we do that. So part of today's conversation is we're trying to make our offer look the best possible. So what's now included in if you use our templates, it's a summary of offer. So basically, this is outlining everything that I put. What was my purchase price? What's my deposit? What's my increased deposit? What's my loan amount? When's my close of escrow? When am I removing my contingencies? Do I have any contingencies? So basically, this is giving your seller and the listing agent a one-page synopsis of your offer. I've seen the new RPA. The new RPA is really going to look like this as page one. So instead of where we did now, where we fill out the RPA and it fills this out, we're going to fill this out and it's going to fill out the RPA. So it's really going to be a shift in the way we do stuff, but it's going to make life so much easier. It's not going to be where we need now to go through 10 pages to hunt and peck to see where the agent, did the agent hide something over here? Everything's going to be up front. So it makes it a lot easier to understand all the transactions, all the issues. So when you get into escrow, everything should be up front. It's not like, on page 7, he decided to put, you're going to credit me $3,000. I'd never look on page 7 for that $3,000 credit, so I didn't even know it was there. So it's a whole new shift. We're going to have classes on that after August, and the new form should be coming out at the end of December. Okay, any questions on the RPA at this point? Everyone's been real quiet.
You've just been a wealth of information, but nothing on the chat box.
Wow, are they all still there?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, Chuck, come on. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the home warranty and inspections. This is a form that is a C21 form. Okay, the way right now it's in the temp. If you use our template, it already populates for you. But let's say you had an old offer, you want to see where it is. It is in all forms. And what you do is you got to go to our form library, C21 Everest. And these are all the forms that we have coded, we have set up, that has all the signatures, has everything fillable, so it makes life a lot easier these days. If you're on the buyer side, we have the Everest Addendum and the home warranty. If you're on the listing side, we have the residential hazards book receipt, and I think that is going to be talked about someplace. If not, we should add that. Chris, can we make sure we add this?
To what? To class?
Yeah, to either the seller documents day 1 or day 2. Because a lot of people don't use this, and it's an important form.
You got it.
So, okay. So that's where you find these forms. So let's go to disclosure regarding home warranty. So as we talked about before, we like to give choices. So we worked on creating one form for all our offices of all the home inspectors that we've done business with and we've had good relationships with. Okay. It's not someone we looked on Yelp and said, oh yeah, they have a 5-star review, let's use them. Okay. These people have been vetted and they've done work with us. If you use one of these and you have an issue, please let us know so we can look into it, because maybe we don't want them on our list. And basically it's done by area. So Simi Valley, Conejo Valley, Santa Clarita. So this shows you who does work in what areas. Okay?
Oh, hang on, Fred.
Yes. Question, good.
Yes. Anita wants to know, when representing both sides, is the seller avid sufficient? If you're representing both sides for the buyer and the seller, okay. She wants to know if one avid sufficient.
One avid is sufficient, but you would make 2 copies so you can put it in dot loop, one for the seller and one for the buyer. But you only need 1 avid. Now, if 2 agents in Century 21 are represented, then you would need 2 avids. Each agent needs to do their own avid. Okay?
Wait a minute. So 2 agents, like if I'm representing the seller, you're representing the buyer. Yeah, 2.
Right. Even though with Century 21 it's a dual agency,
Yeah,
you still need 2 separate avids.
of course.
But if I'm representing both the buyer and seller myself,
Right,
then 1 avid's enough.
right.
Yep. Okay. Then the home warranty companies we deal with. First Republic, okay. And then termite inspecting companies that we deal with. So basically, and mold inspection, we never like to use the word mold. And again, we have it's important that the buyer signs this, because we are giving these recommendations for them to use. So we want the buyer to sign it. We'd like the seller to acknowledge that, but the buyer is the one who we are giving these recommendations to. So.
And it's also important that when you give this information that the buyers make the appointment, not you.
Correct. They have to check with your schedule because you have to be there, but yes, but they need to do that, do the diligence and make the appointment. Okay?
Yes.
Those are the forms for today. Any questions?
Now's the time, guys. We have an
Yeah.
open mic
Yeah,
session.
Fred, on this form, does the seller need to sign it or just the buyer? On
The
this specific,
buyers definitely need to sign it.
but
We'd
the
like
seller's
to-
optional?
Well, we'd like the sellers to sign it too, because they may be picking a termite inspection, or they may want to know who's coming into their property.
But
So,
it's not required that this,
It-
they,
It's semi-required, let's put it
it's
that way.
encouraged, right?
It's encouraged that they sign it, just to disclose what the relationship is.
Got it, thanks.
Anybody else?
I just want to say thank you. I've taken this class a couple of times already, and every time I pick up some nugget that I missed the first time or something, but I get something out of it every time.
That's the
Awesome.
goal, and Andy, you're gonna be
So great.
surprised when we do the new RPA, you're gonna get a lot of nuggets there.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, I always see your face on all these, and, you know, and this just gives it a test. I mean, you know, you're a producing agent, you're doing business, but you still need to know everything that's going on. And like you say, I may not be listening once, I may be saying something different, Karen may be saying something different, so you're always gonna get different versions of it.
Hey, even if I just pick up one tidbit that helps me get a deal through, then it was worth listening, right?
There you go.
Absolutely.
All right.
Can we have that
See you tomorrow.
testimonial? So, can we have you write out that testimonial for us?
As long as you type it up, I'm driving.
There you go. It's recorded, so it's
All
okay. We have it,
Yeah,
we
there
have
you
it
go.
recorded.
You have it on tape. There you go.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. Tomorrow, thank you, Fred. Thank you.
Tomorrow's
thank you.
Karen Bentekoff, she's gonna
Tomorrow,
go over. Okay.
Karen Betancourt will be going over all of the seller documents, most importantly, the listing agreement. So
And it'd be the real Karen, not the fake
Yeah.
Karen.
the real Karen, the blonde Karen. All right, you guys have a great day. And I have most of your email addresses. I've written down mostly everyone's name. So I will, because you're taking part of today, this morning, you were here on time participating. I'll be sure to get the recording out to you first before I send it out to the company later tonight.
All
Okay,
right.
Thanks, Fred
There
and
you
Chris,
go.
great job.
All
Okay.
right. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.